Hello, programmers in the making. I am super excited for joining me in this web development journey. My name is Ding Malweth and I am so happy to be your instructor in this first step of your amazing journey. Yes, some time ago I was in the exact same shoes you are in, though much worse than yours. Let me tell you guys how. For months or maybe even for years, I have been wondering what was really my passion, because I seem to enjoy doing almost everything. But when I realized that time waits for no man, I sat down and decided that I will go for programming, no matter how. So I started, but because I didn't have money at the time to enroll for some exclusive course that could take me from A to Z, I was on my own. And when I entered this room of programming resources, I saw something that still bothers me even today. Yes, there was a lot to learn, and to make matters even more worse, everything was abstract. So I was thinking of immediately quitting the very next day. But on that day, I refused to quit. I thank myself for that decision today. Then I began going from one material to another. Even though I learned a lot on the way, I later realized that programming world is exactly like a market. You do not have to take everything you see, even though it is beautiful. But this realization came to me way longer. Every one of us wants an easy life. So I am sure no one would take the route I took if there was a better way, right? Yes, the better way is simply this channel, where I will hold your hand and guide you every level until you can stand on your own feet. The best part, it is absolutely free. So you will enjoy every bite of it. And our web development journey will begin with this course. In this course, I will answer almost each question all beginners tend to ask, no matter how obvious. This is true for all courses you are going to see in this channel. Yes, I know what you guys want. So you won't bend your neck because a point doesn't click. I am going to explain all those abstract concepts in an easy to follow manner. And this course is 99.9% HTML, such that you won't get both distracted and overwhelmed. I encourage everyone to follow the course in the sequence I have given, because the subsequent chapters use concepts from the previous. This course is designed for absolute beginners, but intermediate level developers may find it interesting as a tool to jog their memory. But I assume that you know basic computer operations such as file creation and location as a prerequisite. Make sure you stick with me until the end of this course, because at the end I am going to show you what you need for your next step. So let's begin our amazing journey of web development in the next lesson. See you there. So in this lesson, we are going to talk about HTML and how it works. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language and is the standard language for creating web pages. A web page is just a single document that is written in HTML and is viewable using a web browser. Right now, what you are looking at is a simple web page from my local website. Then let me actually show you interesting websites and then their respective web pages. So we have a website which is already open here called Hire, and this website you can see its web pages. The web page for the home page is really very amazing, and you can see how beautiful it is. Another website with its own simple web page is here, the sum, and you can see the web page of this website also. HTML document will describe the structure of a web page using a series of HTML elements. These HTML elements tell the browser how exactly to display the content. An HTML element is just a combination of an opening tag, an end tag, and everything that these two tags will be enclosing between them, if there is any. Now, as we are still also talking about HTML elements, I must point out that all HTML elements must have close tags, because it helps the browser to correctly display your web page. But nowadays you can actually leave out the end tags, but for now in this course, since I'm the one instructing you, I want you to make sure that you always close your elements. It is very, very important, and it is a very good practice for you to adopt. And by the way, as you go through this course, you will discover that there are actually elements which do not have closing tags. We call such elements empty elements. So in such a situation, you do not have to close, but if you have already been exposed to close all tag syndrome like me, you will just go ahead and close the tag. But how exactly should you do that one? Well, what you need to do is open the tag and close it within the same angle brackets, just like this. So HTML is not a case-sensitive language, and so you can mix the uppercase tags and the lowercase tags. But w3schools.com recommends using lowercase tags at all times, and therefore we need to adopt this practice. We need to always lowercase our tags. Even in your dreams, I want you to always write lowercase tags. Anyway, you must be asking, all right, fine, since it is not case sensitive, then why did you choose to use lowercase? Why didn't you just take the uppercase? Well, your question is really very good. The reason is very simple. When we use lowercase tags, we don't have to really strain our hands, be switching between the caps, putting on the caps and then first writing and then getting back. You need to also write symbols, and whenever you go between caps, it really disturbs you so much. Another reason that we can give is that they are more good looking compared to the uppercase tags. At this moment, everything about HTML should begin to make sense to you, right? Let us actually make more sense by making it clear that HTML is not a programming language, but a markup language. This is a misconception among beginners, and that's why I want to make sure I clear it from the get-go. So a markup language is a language for annotating your document. Just like how a teacher would mark up areas where a student has made a mistake in his paper, a markup language also marks up the document such that the web browser can properly display that document. HTML is not the only markup language outside there. These include the XML, the XHTML, and they have their own functionalities. On the other hand, a programming language is a series of instructions that produce different kind of output depending on the input that the user gives to that program. Programming languages like JavaScript, Java, Python have the ability to actually do arithmetic, but that is something a markup language cannot do. HTML cannot do arithmetic. It cannot even add a 0 to a 0. At this moment, the next thing you would want to hear about is the history of HTML. But the history of HTML is so famous on the internet. Actually, more than the story of creation. If I had to go ahead and talk about the history of HTML, then I would be reinventing the wheel. If you want to know the history of HTML, all you just need to do, I have given you this exercise. Just go and Google the history of HTML. But then I would like to just close this lesson by saying that the guy who actually created HTML is by the name Tim Berners-Lee, and he created HTML during the time he brought about the World Wide Web, and it was around the early 1990s there. So this has brought us to the end of our presentation for this lesson in this lesson, and therefore it is time to march to the next lesson where the excitement begins. See you in the next lesson after a commercial break. Bye bye. In this lesson, we are going to set up our environment for coding. Install the tools that we are going to use in the upcoming lessons. HTML is really a very simple language, and therefore you need very few tools to begin working with HTML and begin building full-blown websites. In fact, you need only two software to begin working with HTML and even begin building full-blown websites. The first software is called a text editor, and the text editor is basically where you write everything. Text editor can be as simple as TextEdit for Mac OS or Notepad for Windows. The problem with the two is the difficulty that they present as you are working with really very large HTML documents in so many ways. Okay, you will definitely not be using them for developing really these big websites unless you are building a website which is just a very few lines of code, such as the famous Hello World program. But you came here to begin your journey of building that website that is going to change the world, right? Therefore, the best text editor for you is VS Code. popular alternatives include the Atom, Sublime Text, Notepad++. So in this course, I am going to be using VS Code. The good thing about the last list is the fact that they provide you with almost all the best features that you need out of the box, such as very easy file organization. You will discover actually the benefits as you go through this course. But as the saying goes, a burnt child breathes fire. It would be very interesting. It would be interesting for you to try out these simple text editors like Notepad and TextEdit for practicing. And it should be clear to you why you need these advanced text editors. The second software that you need is called a web browser. So a web browser is what reads everything that you have written in your text editor and then displays the expected output. In this course, I will be using Google Chrome, popular alternatives such as Mozilla Firefox, the Microsoft Edge, okay, and so on. Now we know what exactly we want. So it is time to install these tools and we begin the fun of coding. Let us begin by installing the Visual Studio Code. To come to this website that you are seeing me in, code.visualstudio.com, and then it should bring you directly to this page here. Now it should also be able to automatically detect the operating system. So what you need to do next is just press on this button and your download should begin automatically. When your download completes, all you need to do is to press on the file that will appear here. Me, I do not have to re-download this software because I have it already on my computer. Wait for your file, leave it until it has finished downloading. After that, press on the file from within the downloads and then it should automatically launch the installation wizard. Follow all the steps, agree to the terms in case they ask you for the terms, and your software or your VS Code should be installed. Now let's go and install Google Chrome if you do not have the Google Chrome already with you. So all you need to do is also to come to your web browser and search for Google Chrome. The first search result should be the official Google Chrome, and you should have the two very important softwares that you need for this course. All we need to do right now is to go back into our Visual Studio Code. Now what I need you to do after you have opened your Visual Studio Code, I want you to come directly to icon and it should bring you to the search extensions in market. Search for live server. The first result should be the right one. Click install like the way these results are. Search again from here, prettier. Install it. I want us to do one more thing. Come down here, look for settings, then search for formatter. Then come and look for where there is prettier and make sure you click on it. It starts prettier to begin formatting your code whenever you are using. And so this concludes this lesson. So let us go to the next lesson. Yes, in this lesson, we are going to talk about document structure and then write our very first web page. All web pages, no matter how complex or simple they are, have a base structure which is the same. The base structure is made up of only 4 elements. The first one is the doc type element. This element is called the document type declaration, and it tells the browser what version of HTML it is about to display. So with a simple HTML added here, it tells the browser that the version of HTML that you are about to display is HTML5. It is always going to appear at the top here. It is what begins every HTML document you are going to be writing. A simple side note, as you are working with HTML, you have to save your HTML document with an extension of HTML or HTML, just like as I have done it right here. The next element is the HTML element. The HTML element tells the browser where the HTML document begins and where it ends. The other element that makes up the base of every page is the head element. The head element contains the meta information of the document. Meta information is just the data about the document, and it is this meta information that the browser uses to correctly display your HTML document. It is in this head section where you are going to find the title of the web page. Now, the title element is not only important in just giving the title to your document, but it also helps in search engine optimization. So it is very important that you make your title as meaningful as possible. Other important functions of the title, it is going to determine the title of the page when you add it into your favorites. It is also the same title that is going to be given in the search results. The style element is where you put your internal CSS. CSS stands for cascading style sheets, but in this lesson you do not need to worry about this confusing thing that we have written inside here, but I put it right here to let you know that we also use the style element. Then the next element is the link element. The link element is used to link an external CSS to your current document. So right now I have my style.css, which is a different file that is sitting in another folder, but I am creating a relationship between this file I am in, which is called index.html, and then this style.css, which is sitting in the CSS folder. The next element, which is also very important, is the meta element. The meta element with different types of attributes tell the browser different information. The first attribute is called a char set, and it tells the browser the character encoding that this website is going to be using. There are very many types of character encoding, but the most modern one, or the one which will cover all characters in the world, is the UTF-8, and it is the one we are using also right here. Then the meta element also is the one that is going to be used for setting the page description. So I have given here that the page description is free educational tutorials for all. It is also within the meta element that you are going to also define the keywords for your web page. And in this web page, I have given the keywords as HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. It is also within the meta element that you can define the author for this page. And you can see that the author for the page I made it as Ding. And most importantly, it is also within the meta element that you define the viewport settings for your web page. So the viewport is the visible area of your web page. So if assuming the whole of this thing you are seeing here is my web page, with this information set, it will tell the browser to detect the screen dimensions of the device the page is being viewed in, and therefore helps the browser to display the web page very correctly. This meta with the viewport name and then the title element should always be defined in all your HTML pages. Then the next element that you need to actually define is the body element. The body element is where everything that you need to be displayed on your web page is going to be shown. If I want to show images, if I want to show videos, if I want to show text, everything is going to be located within the body element, and it begins from here up to right here. Right now, let me just save this file here, and let us go to the browser and we check what result we have. So just like any other simple website that people build, we are going to greet the world. So we shall just say hello world. We shall write our famous hello world program here. So I will just say hello, but then let me a little bit deviate and I say hello viewers. Okay, then I save, and then let me go back to the browser and we see what result we have. So if I say open with live server, I should see some results. So as you can see, we have hello viewers right here. So let's go back into the VS Code, and then I tell you some bit of what is going on right here. The reason why you can see that the body is kind of dirty purplish is because of the fact that I use some styles here, but by default, let me remove this because it is not important. I didn't want to use it, only that I used it here because I wanted to explain something. So I'm removing that. The next thing I'm also going to remove is this, because it is not part of this. The next thing that we are going to remove is this. I don't need this because it is not also part of this tutorial, and we shall just remain with only this. So if we go back to the browser and we check what we have, we should see a really very simple website. Your first website that you are going to build should look exactly like this. We have successfully created our very first web page in HTML. This has brought us to the end of this lesson, and therefore it's time to march to the next lesson. Yes, perfect. So in the previous lesson, we talked about the head elements, such as the link element and the meta element. Now, inside the start tag of these elements, we did not only write there the tag name, but we also went ahead and we wrote some text that appeared in name value pairs like this. So such a tag is called an attribute. An attribute gives additional information about an HTML element, okay, and modifies the behavior of that specific element. This is best demonstrated by the meta element. The meta element on its own, like this, the meta element on its own does not do much, but the moment you begin to add attributes, it begins to perform a variety of functions, as we saw in the previous lesson. And as you can still see here with the chart set, it is defining the character set of this page, and with the name of viewport, it is also telling the page, it is also telling the browser that adjust the width to fit properly for any device width that this page is going to be displayed in. So that's the meta element and how attributes modify its behavior. HTML attributes do not always appear within the head elements, like here, as we are seeing here. Any element in your HTML document can have attributes. Then attributes usually come in name value pairs, just as we can see here. But it is not a must that they must always come in such a fashion. As we go through the course, you are going to see those attributes which do not actually have values, but they also hold as attributes. Then attribute values do not always have to be quoted, as you are seeing here, but there are situations when you are going to be forced to do so, such as when you are using the title attribute. Now the title attribute, if I just add it right here, the title attribute, if I add it right here and I just say this value here is a multi-word text, and therefore there is no way I can display this one correctly on the web page when I have not put it in quotes, and therefore that is the situation when we need to use the quotes. By the way, you must be asking now, what does this title attribute do? What is the difference between it and this? Okay, the title attribute is just what shows every time you hover over an element. Now let us save and we see how this one is going to be reflected on the page. If we come to the page right here and then I hover over this, I should see HTML course, and as you can see, it is showing there HTML course. In this course, there are attributes that we are going to be using very frequently. So the first attribute that we need to know about is called an href attribute. An href attribute just is used with the anchor element, just like this, and it defines the URL of the page the link goes to. So I can just define my URL here. Do not worry about how this stuff is, okay? Do not worry about it at all. So I can say page and maybe say digital camera. So and I put some text here, maybe digital camera. If I save this page and then I digital, and then I view it on the browser, if I have to press on this text here that is appearing here, it will take me to digitalcamera.html page. So the next attribute that we are going to look at is called the src attribute. So the src attribute is always used with the img tag, and it specifies the file path of the image that is supposed to be embedded in your web page. So for example, I can just say, let me take this workplace.jpg. Then the next attribute that we need to look at is the style attribute. The style attribute is used to define the inline CSS for a given or a specific HTML element in your page. So if I want to maybe change the color of this text here that you are seeing HTML course in my page here, then I will have to add an inline CSS. If I want to do my work very quickly, I just say style and then I put that the color of this HTML code should be orange. There is another very important attribute that you also need to know right now, and that is the lang attribute. You can see that I'm using it here with the HTML element, and it is always specified there. The lang attribute is used to declare the language of this web page, and as you can see, the language I'm using here is English, of course. So the value of the lang attribute is always going to be a language code, such as EN, which stands for English, AF for Africans, AR for Arabic, and so on and so on. In this course, there are those attributes that we are not going to be using as much, but it is very important to know about them at the start. And these are class attribute. The class attribute is used to select one or more elements from the same document for styling. Now, as we begin styling in the CSS course, you are going to see that we are going to be using the class attribute really very much. On the other hand, we have the ID attribute. The ID attribute is used to select only one element from the page or from the HTML document, and there can be no more than one element in the same document that have got the same ID name. So that's the difference between the ID and then the class attributes. Attributes, we must also make it clear that are not case sensitive. For the same reasons that we saw with elements, this has actually brought us to the end of our presentation in this lesson, and so let's meet in the next lesson after a commercial break. And perfect. So in this lesson, we are going to talk mainly about comments. Comments are really a very big part of our development journey. So a comment is just a text that you add into your document and is ignored by the browser when it renders the page. So a comment in HTML is specified by a to-dash tag. So what am I trying to mean by a to-dash tag? Well, a to-dash tag is anything that is going to be like this. A start tag must always begin with an exclamation and then the two dashes. So everything that is going to be included, okay, between these two tags, this one, this tag, and this tag is going to be a comment. At this moment, someone may be asking himself, okay, fine, that's how a comment is done, but why do we need a comment? Well, that's a good question, and there are really very many reasons why we need a comment, okay, we need comments in our HTML document. The first reason is comments are a very good way of documenting our code. The second reason why we need comments, they are very good as reminders. Number 3, why we need comments is that they are used for hiding out part of your code. So this actually brings us to the end of this lesson. It is as simple as that. But in this course, we are going to be using comments really very heavily. Any element in HTML can be styled. And as much as I would like to avoid talking about styling, I would also want to introduce you to styling. Now, styling in HTML is done by what is called CSS. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. And since this course is not meant for cascading style sheets, I'm not going to touch the details about cascading style sheets, but just show you how to add a simple CSS onto our web page, such that when you see me in the future videos talking about adding such a code, you will know that I am adding just a simple CSS. There are 3 ways of adding CSS in our web page, and the simplest one of all is adding an inline style attribute to any element, and that's what I'm going to show you in this lesson. Let me make the h1 element. Let me change the color of the h1 element text. I say style, and then I put their color. So to change the color of text, you use the color property. I can put as many of them as possible, but they must be separated with a semicolon. Each of these pair is called the property value pair. What I'm going to put here is the value. So I want to put orange here. If I save this and then come back to the page, I will see that the color of my heading has changed to orange. I can add more stuff. If I want to center this, I will come inside of the style attribute and add another. They must be separated. The property value pair must be separated with the semicolon. I want to center the text, so I will say text align. Text align. Then I will put center. It is already auto-suggesting for me, so I will just put there center. If I save this and then get back to my web page, and you can see that my heading has been changed. So that's how we use simple styles in our web page. So I am going to end this lesson right here, and therefore see you in the next lesson. So there are so many HTML elements, and one course is really not enough to exhaust the list. So in this lesson, I'm going to show you the elements that you'll be using in all your projects. Some of them you have already covered them in the previous lesson, so I will not repeat them in this lesson, but I'm just going to add onto the list of these elements that you will be using in all your projects. Now, the first is going to be the headings elements. So the heading elements are defined in levels. There are 6 levels of headings in HTML. That is from H1 up to H6. Heading 1 defines the most important heading, and heading 6 defines the least important heading in your document. Next most common element is going to be paragraph element. And a paragraph element, as the name suggests, defines a paragraph, and it is also specified by a P tag, as you can see right there. Then the next element is going to be the span element, and the span element is just used, it may be part of a paragraph, and it's just used to style a part of text or a piece of text. Its use is not so well defined actually, and so you can use it in almost any situation, and therefore it is best for styling purposes. The next element is a div element. Now a div element is also functional like a span element, but it is more powerful than the span element. And as we go through the course, we shall return to the div element, and we shall try to talk more about it, and you'll see how powerful it is compared to the span element. Okay, and as you can see, I have wrapped within this div element another paragraph element, which is saying this is a paragraph inside a div element. Let us just save this document and we see how it is. That is it. So you can see that the H1 was defining the most important heading, and you can see it is more bold than the second, and the second is more bold than and bigger than the third, and the third is more bold and bigger than, like that until level 6, as you can see right there. These are the elements that you are going to be using very frequently within your projects. This actually brings us to the end of this lesson, and therefore we need to meet in the next lesson after a commercial break. See you right there. Yes, perfect. So before CSS, there were elements that were meant for formatting the text within your HTML page. We call these elements the formatting elements. In this lesson, we are going to just give an overview, or we are going to talk about a few of the formatting elements that we can still be used today. There are so many examples of formatting elements, but in this lesson, we are just going to mention a few of them. The U tag. The U tag is used for underlining the text. So let me cut it out and I put it inside the body, and we see how it works in there. So if I also go back to the browser and I check it, you can see that our text has been underlined. Another element that we use, which has not been replaced almost entirely by CSS, is the sub element. The sub element or superscript is used for giving a superscript to a text. Okay, there are so many situations where you will need to put a superscript to a text, and to put a superscript to a text, you use a sub element. So this one is saying that today's temperature is 34 degrees Celsius. So let us see how it is going to be on the web browser. So if we come to the web browser and we check, you are seeing that today's temperature is 34 degrees Celsius. That little O there is a little bit higher than the rest of the text because of this sub element or sub tag. Then the other element is the sub. The opposite of sub is sub. The sub element, what it does, it gives a subscript to a text. So if I cut this out and I put it inside the body, we are going to see that this sub element log of 32 base 2 is equal to 5. Let us see how this one is going to actually be. If we view this one on a web browser, you can see that this 2 is below all the other parts of the text. Then lastly, another element that we can usually use these days is the strong element. The strong element is used to add important text to an element. If you want to emphasize a point, then you can use strong, and you can see that in the browser the text is actually bold, like the way it is for the bold element. There are so many others outside, there are so many other formatting elements, but I have shown you those ones which have not yet been largely replaced by the CSS, like for example the superscript, the subscript, and then the strong. So I will see you in the next lesson after a commercial break. Perfect. In this lesson, we are going to talk about nesting and white spaces. Nesting in HTML is simply putting one element into another element, okay? Making one element a child element of another element. We have already seen nesting in action. We saw that the head element was again containing other elements inside of it. So the title, the meta, they are all children of head. Okay, so they are nested inside the head, and then the HTML is also nesting another element, which is in this case head, and then a body element. So when one element is inside another element, we call that one nesting. As simple as that. In HTML, when we just create our own spaces and then we try to view it on the browser will cut out the number of lines but -1. It will cut out all those lines and then leave only one spacing. So for example, let me say I have that heading. Then if I create again something of 10 spaces down like this, and then I come in and put my paragraph element, and then I put this a paragraph. This is a paragraph. So if I put this like this, then the browser is going to cut out 9 lines, and then it will remain with only one line to separate the head and then the paragraph element. So the browser does not preserve the space that you just put manually inside of this document. So let us save and we see how really this one is going to be. So like the way our Pretty has formatted the code here is the same way browser is going to view. It will just leave only one line between the heading and then the paragraph. Let's check it out. So if I come to the browser, you can see that we have only one line between the heading and the paragraph, right? This line here. There are situations when we need to preserve our white spaces, right? And when we need to preserve our white space, this is where another element called a pre element comes in, which is actually a short form for preserve element. So assuming that I want to preserve all my 10 spaces that I created here, what I would have done was by writing the pre, put the 10 spaces right like this, and I save this file. I must have something, by the way. The prettier is cutting out all the spaces because there is nothing inside of this. But let us put one element right up here. Maybe let us say this one is P and then paragraph. Let us say paragraph. Then we save this. Paragraph and paragraph have been separated by this number of lines, and if we come to the browser, everything is going to be reflected like the way it is. And as you can see, we have this paragraph and then this paragraph with those number of lines preserved the way they are appearing in our text editor. Now, this is therefore the way you are going to be solved the poem problem that we usually meet. A poem is made up of different stanzas. So these stanzas always come after some number of white spaces. Like you put a certain verse together and then again you need to leave a white space, another stanza like that. So I have just pre-formatted my let us say this is our imaginary poem, okay, and I have pre-formatted it the way it is. If I copy this, okay, and then come into this pre-element here and then paste my poem, the way it is appearing in the text editor is the same way it must appear in the browser. So if I save this right now and then I come into the browser, everything is formatted the same way it was appearing in the text editor. So if you want to preserve white spaces, this is how you should be preserving, by using the pre-element. Okay, it is the pre-element which preserves white spaces. Other than that, white spaces are always going to be cut out by the web browser until only one is remaining. So that was it for this lesson. We needed to just talk about the white spaces and how the browser deals with white spaces. Then nesting, which we have actually seen already in action. So this actually brings us to the end of this lesson, and therefore it is time to march to the next lesson. See you there. Okay, and for now, just have a commercial break and come back. So in this lesson, we are going to talk about the levels of elements. We have two levels of elements, the inline element and then the block level elements. Inline elements are those elements which take up space which is only necessary for their content, and they do not take up any extra space before and after them. So this span element that you are seeing here is an example of an inline element, because any element that follows it will take space which is immediately after it. So right now we are going to again add two terms to our vocabulary. The first term is what we call a parent element. The second term is what we call siblings elements. So sibling elements are those elements which have a common parent. Let me add another sibling. For example, strong. This is strong. If I add this is strong. This is strong. So if I add this, it is now there are three siblings to this body element. So we expect that since we have three siblings, we expect them to follow themselves on different lines when we try to display them in the browser. But this is not the case for what we call the inline elements. Inline elements do not push their next siblings to the next line. Okay, the next siblings I'm talking about here, if this one is our current sibling, then the next siblings are the one which follow immediately. For example, the strong in this case. So this span is not going to push the strong to the next line when we try to display them on the browser, but it will display them on the same line, which in this case is going to be line 14. So let us save and we check how it is appearing on the browser as for now. As you can see, the span element ended with inline right here, and then immediately the strong element followed. The inline elements do not only have this feature. Another feature they have is that they do not take up the full width of the page. So you can even see already from here that the span element, even if there was the next sibling was the strong, it did not take up the full width. The full width I'm talking about is like beginning from here until the end here. That's the full width of the parent element or the whole page. Another feature we see with inline elements is that they do not have default margins. So another thing we must also note about inline elements is the fact that they do not have height, they do not have width. Let us demonstrate what I'm talking about here by coming back to VS Code and then try to put a style here, and I put the height to this span element. Let me put the height. Let me make it really big. Let me say, for example, 500 pixels. To make it really clear, let me also add another thing, border, such that we can really see whether the height is reflected on the page or not, because if I just leave it only as height, it may not reflect properly on the page. So let me add the border here, and the border I'm putting, I will just make it as small as 1 pixel, solid, and then leave it just as black. Okay, let us leave it like that. Let me save this file right now and I go to the page. Let us check it out how it is appearing. You can see even if I made my height really very big, nothing changed. It remains the same way. Since we have now understood how inline elements are, let us go ahead and we look at the block elements. We see the difference now. Block elements are those elements which take up the full width of the page or the parent element. Let me put an example here, which is the P. The P is an example of a block element. If I say this is a paragraph, this is a paragraph. Okay. Now this paragraph here must start on a new line because it is a block element. Even though there is a strong here, this strong is going to remain where it is supposed to be with its span, but this P is going to take up its own line, even though there is space going to be left by both the span and the strong. Now you can see that there is really enough space left from here to the very end here. That is enough to accommodate this is a paragraph. But because we have used a paragraph and it is a block element, it pushes automatically to the next line. Then these block elements also have height. Their height is not ignored like the one we have seen with inline elements. Let us take an example and we look at it. So if I come and copy this height here, okay, let me copy everything that is inside of this. If I copy this, okay, Control C, and then come into this and then paste what I have. Let me paste. Oh, let me yeah, it is here, right here. So let me save this and then come back to the browser. By all means, you can see that the height has been reflected, and even though I did not specify the width of the paragraph element, the width is by default 100%. It takes up the full width of the parent element, which in this case is the body element. So the body element in this case is the parent of p tag, and it takes up the full width of the body, which is actually the width of the whole page. These elements are the only ones which can also nest other block elements. Block elements can nest block elements and even inline elements, but it is not the other way around. You cannot nest a block element inside an inline element. But at times, this behavior that we have just seen, that is held by the inline elements and the block elements, we do not always like this behavior. We do not like their default behavior. We want them to even assume some better behaviors. For example, I want this span element to be able to have width, to be able to have height. I want it to reflect the height of 500 pixels. How can I do that one? Now, the answer to this question is a hybrid of the block elements and then the span element and then the inline elements. So the hybrid of the two, if I combine the best features of the inline elements and then with the best features of the block elements, if I put them together, then I will come up with another type, which in this case we are going to just name by combining the inline and the block, and we term it as inline block. So inline block will have the ability of increasing the height, having even margins, paddings, and so many, actually, and all the features that block elements have. But then it will also have an additional ability of not pushing elements to the next line. That's how we can therefore tweak the behaviors of these elements so that they can suit our intention. Now, in this lesson, and particularly this course, I am not going to go into the inline block level, okay, because that is just a hybrid which comes about as a result of CSS. So I'm not going to touch it at all, okay. I'm going to reserve it for CSS. This lesson is actually getting very long, so I want us to make sure that it ends sweet, okay, by concluding it from here. See you right there in that next lesson. In this lesson, we are going to talk about URLs and file path. What is URL? URL is the short form of Uniform Resource Locator and is the term that we use to describe the mechanism of accessing given resources on the internet. On the other hand, file path is the list of folders you have to follow in order to access a given file on your computer system. For now, in order to keep things manageable, I'm going to give you permission to use these two terms interchangeably. But as we go through the lesson, I'll show you situations where this is always not the case. We like to categorize URLs into two. That is absolute URLs. An absolute URL is the only ultimate path you can use to access a specific resource on the internet. An example of an absolute URL looks like this. On the other hand, the absolute file path is the only path you can use to access a given file within your computer system. An example of an absolute file path looks like this. If you analyze these two terms, you are going to see that they are more similar than they are different. This is because they absolutely define the location of a given file or resource within a given medium. And that is, the absolute URL defines the location of a given resource on the internet, while The absolute file path defines the location of a file in your computer system. Because of the fact that the folder structure in one computer always differs from another computer, it is considered a bad practice to use absolute file path in your website if they are intended to be hosted on the internet. This is not true for absolute URLs. Absolute URLs are meant to be used on the internet, and therefore you can use them without any problem or worries in your website. In fact, there are so many occasions where you are going to be using absolute URLs to define to link resources from the internet to your website. For example, when you want to connect your website to a certain CDN, such as the Awesome. I know a question is burning you right now. Alright, I'm not supposed to use absolute URLs to link my files to my website. So how am I supposed to link these files that I want to use on my website? Well, that's where the second category of URLs comes in. Relative URLs. Relative URL is the path you can use to access a given resource on your website depending on which file you are accessing it from. The path always changes. So if you are in file A, the path is not going to be the same as when you are in file B. To really make this point clear, I am going to use these two files, relative 1 and relative 2. These two files, I'm going to use them to demonstrate what I am trying to mean by the file path changes depending on which file you are accessing from. I am imagining that I have a file in images folder. This is the camera.jpg that I want to access from my website. Let me assume that my website is having two files, and that is relative 1 and relative 2. Now, these two files are located in the relative path folder, whereby the first, which is relative 1, is located in file path directly, while relative 2 is located in the child folder of relative path, which is here. Now, to access image file from this relative 1, this is the relative path that I'm going to use in order to access that image. Please note how this path looks. Let's go to relative 2 and we also compare. If you look at relative 2, this is how we are going to access the same camera image from relative 2. Note how this looks. Now, this is not the case for absolute file path. Let's assume that I want to access this camera image using absolute file path from relative 1 and relative 2. How should I do that? If I want to do that, I will just put a comment because I really don't want to write tags here for things we are not going to use so much. I want to access this camera.jpg using an absolute file path. This is how I would do it. I would come to this file, that is camera.jpg, and then right click it. Then come to where they are saying copy path command. Hit on that command, copy path, and then your path is now in the clipboard. So let me paste it, command V, and you can see the absolute file path of camera.jpg. Now, this same path is what I'm going to use to access camera.jpg in my relative 2. It doesn't matter which file I'm in as long as I want to access my camera.jpg. I am going to use the same path. So that's what differentiates the relative file path from an absolute file path. Let me show you how to construct relative file path. Now, before doing that, I want you to remember always this algorithm because it is going to really save you a lot of time for you to construct a relative file path. And the algorithm goes: 1. Go into your root folder, and in this case, this is my root folder, and make sure that all your folders, your files, everything that you need on your website is under the root folder. And I am confident that all my files, all my folders that I need for this website, I have put them under root folder. Number 2, go to the file you want to access different files from. Let me assume that this is the file I want to link from. Number 3, ask yourself, is the file that I'm looking for in the same folder as the file I am linking from? If yes, then you need only this for you to access the file. That is // and then the name of the file. Ask yourself again, if that is not true, is the file I'm looking for in a child folder or in a descendant folder? In this case, these are the child folders of relative path. If the answer is yes, then instead of file name // folder name, that is the child folder, and then / subfolder, let me assume in this case name, and then / until you reach the name of the file name with its extension. So that is the third step of this algorithm. The fourth step, if this is not true, ask yourself, is the file I'm looking for therefore in the parent folder or in one of the ancestor folders? If the answer is yes, then do this. Instead of having a // you are going to access all such files in this fashion by using // actually here implies that go one level up. Now let us use our file path example. I'm accessing the image file. The image file is in another folder, which is the images folder. If we look at images folder and then the relative file path folder, these two folders are siblings of HTML course root folder. So it means that I have to get out of this folder in order to find the file I'm looking for. I don't have to go any deep. So always to get out of a certain folder and in order to access another file, then you have to use // Then ask yourself, have I in this level I am in, can I be able to access the file I'm looking for using any route? At this moment, because I am in right now, I have come out by using .. I have come out of this file and I'm here. This is where I am. I'm outside here. So I ask myself, can I be able to use any route here to find the file I'm looking for, which in this case is the camera.jpg? The answer is yes. So which route should I follow in this case? I'm supposed to follow the images. Okay, then from images I go inside the images. So for you to go inside, you have to use a // and then in this case that's where the camera.jpg comes in. If you notice, this is the same path that we have used right here to access the camera.jpg. Isn't it interesting? And actually constructing relative file path is a lot easier if you use this algorithm. So having explained for you the algorithm, let us dive in right now and we look at a full-blown example of using relative file path and we practice more. Let's go to this file here. This file is the departmental feedbacks.html. The departmental feedback.html is really deep in this folder tree from file path example down to departmental feedbacks. This is where the file resides. Now we have to use our algorithm to access given files in this folder structure. Before we continue, I want to give you a brief story about this departmental feedbacks.html file. Let's imagine that we have a company. This company is Bentic company, and this Bentic company has got a hierarchy from board of directors down to finance specialists. Each department, of course, has got its own function here. The finance specialist, one of their roles is to develop financial models. So some weeks ago, the finance specialist office distributed financial model to all the offices above it and also below it. Today they decided that they wanted to collect the feedbacks from all these offices. Now the feedbacks from these offices will let the finance specialist office know whether going to be agreed upon or not. They begin from their office. Let us assume that the office is the departmental feedbacks.html, the file we are currently in. I hope you are seeing the algorithm now in practice, and they want to know what is their feedback on this financial model that they had proposed. So if we come to the finance specialist, this is the block. The flow is the finance specialist. We have actually divided this company into floors of a story building. So the first floor has got the finance specialist office, which is here. Now, the finance specialist office has got about 3 children. The subordinate, which is a folder, departmental feedbacks.html, finance specialist file. So these are the only files in this first floor. So we are looking for this image here, which is the finance specialist.jpg. So we ask ourselves, is the finance specialist.jpg in the same folder as the departmental feedbacks? And if you look at it, these two files are in the same folder, which is in this case financial specialist, and the answer is therefore a yes. Do you remember how we are supposed to access this? If you do, then it is just going to be a dot / and then the name of the file, which in this case is the finance specialist, and we are done. So we have received the feedback for the finance specialist office. We want to see how are they happy about this financial model. So let me first save, and then I open this file using the live server. So the file is here, and yes, they are so happy about it. According to my interpretation, they are saying that with this model, we are going to reach so many heights and we are going to be a lot happier. Wow, this is a very good interpretation. Okay, let's get back. Let's get back and we check. Let us see. I'm curious to see how the other offices are reacting to this financial model. So we go to subordinates. We want to know, this is the subordinates. So the subordinates have their feedback too. So we ask ourselves, if we want to find the feedback of these subordinates, how should we get it? We ask ourselves, is the feedback in a child folder of finance specialist or in the parent folder? And the answer to this question is that it is in a child folder. And as you can see, for real, we have the finance specialist, and within the finance specialist, we have the subordinate subfolder. So how should we access that file or that feedback? The answer, if you remember the algorithm, is / the name of the subfolder or the child folder, and then the name of the file in case you have reached to that folder where the file is located. So I will just enter subordinate.jpg, and we are done. We have also got the feedback of subordinate office. Let us save and we see how these guys have reacted to this, and they are like, wow, this is actually amazing. This amazing model that you have developed. Okay, they are good. Let's continue. I have a feeling that this proposal is going to succeed. In this office, let me collapse such that we can work with fewer folders. The next file that we are going to look for, or the next feedback, is from the finance director office. Now, the finance director office, if you look at it, is above the finance specialist office. So it is in the second floor. So in this case, to access the finance.jpg, I'm supposed to use a .. And then I ask myself, have I reached the folder that has the image I'm looking for? And the answer is yes, I have reached the folder, which in this case, it is the finance director. And where is the file I'm looking for? It is the finance.jpg. So I put like that. We are done. So I save. And then we see how they have actually reacted to this. And oh my God, they are so happy about it. Let us collapse this file, this folder, because we have gotten their feedback. We go to staff director's office. and we need the file, we ask ourselves again the same question. It is, by all means, I'm sure you are getting the pattern right now. And so it means that the folder that has this departmental feedbacks is within the finance director, and by all means this staff director is the parent of the folder that has the departmental feedbacks, and therefore we have to access it using the same pattern that we use for finance.jpg. So I'm going to say dot forward slash dot forward slash, and we have reached the finance director, the staff director office, which has in this case 2 children. And by the way, if you have been noticing, we all, every time we reach a certain folder, we see the children which are in that folder, and in this case the children of this staff director are the finance director folder, and then the staff director.jpg, which we are looking for. So I will just click on that and I save. All right, let us see how these people are reacting to the financial model. And at this moment I don't have a word for this. So we come to the CEO office feedback. I am curious to see how the CEO is actually reacting to this. The pattern goes, if we collapse this, we shall see that the CEO is the parent of all the files until the departmental feedback. So I am just going to use the same pattern that I used up there. So I put dot forward slash dot forward slash dot forward slash. Have I reached the CEO office? Yes, I have reached, and we therefore have the CEO.jpg. So I will just click on it and I save. Let us go to this and we look for how the actually right now the CEO is furious about the he's so furious about the model. Maybe the model is suggesting that the CEO's salary must be reduced. The CEO is in fact not happy about the model. It is the guy I've seen so far who is really so hungry about the model. All right, let us continue to the next office. I'm curious to see what their feedback is. Guys, if you look at it, I'm using the third step of the algorithm from, I think, the third flow. Actually the second flow, I've been using the third step of the algorithm, and it is actually the hardest part of this algorithm. The others are so simple. Okay, that's why I'm using so many of them in order to make sure that this point is actually well understood. We are now in the board of directors office. We want to know how these guys have responded to this proposal. Still, if I collapse the CEO, I am in the board of directors office. So how should I get to the file I'm looking for? I will just say dot forward slash dot forward slash dot slash, and we have reached the office. We have climbed and we have reached there. So how we ask for their feedback, and they say it is right there on the desk. We get it, and then we have to review how have they reacted. And in this case, according to my interpretation, they are saying with this proposal we shall get to new heights with a lot of happiness. Wow, the board of directors are happy about the proposal. So who is the CEO? Even if it means firing him, he will go. All right, we'll go to the 6th floor. Now the 6th floor is where the partners of this company are located. We ask for their feedback. Now if you look at it, the Bentic company and then the Bentic partners are the siblings of HTML course. Do you remember how we got the camera.jpg when these file images and the relative path were siblings of one another? If we come back to just review, it is right here. We had to get into the folder and then we access the camera.jpg. It is the same thing we are going to do here. So we shall climb until we reach the office, and then we get into the office to find the file we are looking for. So it is going to be dot slash, and we have reached the Bentic partner. So we get into their floor and then we ask for their feedback. Yes, it is right on the table. We get it, and we have successfully collected all the feedbacks from the offices, right from the first floor up to the 6th floor. So we want to know what the feedback of the partners is. So we go down until we see, and they are saying that with this proposal we are going to be more united. We shall be a family. Wow, wow. By all means, if we see the feedbacks, if we are actually in a democratic company, by all means, this proposal must pass. So we have come to the end of this demonstration, and I'm sure you have enjoyed how to construct relative file path. Every time you want to construct relative file path and you have gotten some confusion, just come to this video and follow the algorithm, and you will be good to construct any file path that you are looking for. To wrap things up, I want to say that in a real world project, nesting up to about 5 levels here is really not so necessary. The reason why I made sure that I reached the level 5 was to make sure that the point was really understood. How to construct was following just a pattern in order to reach a certain file. For going up levels, you have to use the // until you reach the file you are looking for. And yet to get into children, you have to just use only one dot, and then to go into the child, the pattern continues until the file you are looking for. This pattern is going to remain the same forever, as long as we are using the same computer. This brings us to the end of this interesting lesson. Images are very important to boost the appearance of your website, and therefore it is very important to know how to embed images on your web page. Now in this lesson, we are going to do exactly that. We are going to learn how to embed images on the website. Now to embed an image onto the website, you have to use img tag. If you notice, this tag here does not have a closing tag. It is just an empty tag. And therefore what it does, it just references the image, and the image is only got from the time it is being loaded. Any other time, the image resides on the file system. So image and then the text, the way the browser views them is different. The text is viewed directly while the image is loaded first into the browser for it to be viewed. The image tag or the img tag has got 2 attributes. The src attributes, which you use to define the URL or the file path of the image that you want to embed onto your web page. The alt tag that you use to define the alternative text that is displayed in case for some reason your image does not display on your web page. So let us imagine we have a file which is index.html in this case, and we want to embed an image into it. How do we do that? To do that one, let us also assume we have also a simple image that is just next to this index.html. To link this image to this page, what I'm going to do, I will use the src attribute and then add to it, then / and then I look for the image. So the image in this case is right here, which is workplace.jpg. If I click on that, then I have now linked this image to the page. And every time I load this page, it is always going to also load the image. Now, I have to define also the alt attributes value. So to define this, I will just put there workplace desk. Let me assume that that is my alternative text that is displayed in case for some reason my image cannot be displayed. So if I save this and then go to my browser and I view, I should see my image embedded on my page. Let's get back. This image tag or img tag has got also 2 missing attributes at this point. The width attribute and the height attribute, which are used to define the dimensions of the image that you need to embed onto your web page. It is so important for you to always define the dimensions of your image, because it helps the browser to calculate the dimensions even before the image has completely loaded. And so we have to put the dimensions of this image, and you put it by the width attribute, which is, now let us give it 640. There are no units which are given to this value. Leave it as a number. Then the height attribute, which is 360. No units 2 are given to this value. If I save and then I load the page once again, I should see that there are no changes that have been made in this case. My image remains the same. But if you look at it, there is a problem. We are viewing actually a wrong image. So there it is. Now let's get back to our VS Code. Now this was happening long time. Putting the width and the height attribute was happening long time before the CSS came into use. But right now the width and the height attributes are part of history, and therefore we should leave them remain in history. The modern way of therefore giving the dimensions of an image on the page is using CSS. And then how do you do that? Now within the image tag, I am going to remove these two attributes, and then I put the style attribute. So it is the style attribute that is used to define the dimensions of this page. So I will put the width, and then now the width is going to remain the same, 640, but then I should add my units, which in this case is px. Px stands for pixels. Then I'm going to add my height property with its value too. So height is going to be 360, again with the units of pixels. If I save this file and I load the page again, nothing should change. This is therefore how you embed your images onto your web page. You must define the src, the alt, and then the style attribute with the height and the width. Now we must also realize that working with images does not only stop here. You can use images in combination with any other element on the web page. You can use them with links, you can use them with headings, you can use them with literally any element on the web page. And therefore, the creativity is left in the hands of the developer. Now, you can even use images as backgrounds of specific elements on the page. For the demonstration purposes, I'm going to use the body element, and I define the background of my body element. To do that, I am going to first remove this image. If I remove this image and then come to my body element, so for me to define the background of this body element, I am going to use the style attribute. And within the style attribute, I define a property called background. So the property called background will give me the ability to add the background image of this body element. And to add the background image, I use a method called URL. The method called URL has an argument of URL or a file path, which in this case is, let's assume that I want to use this file, which is dining table full.jpg. So I am going to say dot stroke, and then dining table full.jpg is right here. If I click on this and then save, and then go to my browser, I should see that I have my background image. Notice that this background image is covering the whole body element. Now, what happens in case we use smaller image? Now, the background image in this case was really big enough to cover the whole body element. What if we are using a very small image? What happens? Let us check out. So instead of using dining table, I am going to replace this dining table with workplace.jpg, which is this image right here. Okay, if I save this file and I go back to my browser, I should see something interesting. And you can see that the image has been repeated both horizontally and vertically. So that is what happens in case you use an image that is smaller than the element. Now, I don't want such a behavior. I want to make sure that my image appears only once. I don't want it to be repeated even if it is smaller. CSS will also equip you with another property called background repeat. So the background repeat is right here. All right, and then you give it a value. This value, sorry, for some reason there is something actually happening here. Let us check it out once again. All right, cool. The background repeat, I'm going to give it no repeat. So if I save this file and go back to my browser, I should see some change. And yes, I have been able to set the background of the body with only one image, no repetition allowed. But still, if I want it to at least cover the background in an horizontal repeat way, I will say instead of no repeat, I will make it repeat X. So if I say repeat X and save the file and then go back to the browser, I should see some change, and you can see that the image has been repeated only horizontally. And as you might have guessed, if you want it to repeat vertically, then you say repeat Y. We shall stop from here, and by the time we get to CSS, we shall talk about more properties of working with images. Since we have actually looked at some basics of images or working with images, let us now look at something that is more advanced, also connected with working with images, which is called image maps. Images clickable on different parts of the same image, that when you click on one part, it takes you maybe to a different message connected to that image that you were clicking on. So such images are called image maps. In other words, these images have got hotspots that when you click on them, they take you to different pages, or they give a more in-depth explanation of that part of the image that you clicked. Now, there are two ways of creating image maps in HTML, the hard way and the easy way. I am the lazy type, so I am going to show you the easy way. I'm sorry for encouraging laziness in you. In your browser, type image maps. Where they are saying free online image map generator, click on that. Where they are saying select image from my PC or load image from website, right now I'm going to select image from my PC. I want the image that is already in my PC, so I will click on that option. Then I will come to the image I want to use is right. All right, let me take plate for now. Now this is your plate. Now in this plate, I want to make this inner plate here the hot area of this image of mine, such that when someone clicks onto this, it will take him to another website or directs him to another website or another web page. Because this plate here is kind of circular, I have to come and choose the shape here to be circle. And then the link here is the link to the web page that when a user clicks on this image will be redirected to. Let us come back onto our Visual Studio Code, and then let us generate the link. So what I'm going to do, I'm first going to put a comment here, and then I first create my link from there. So I put a comment there. This is the page that I want to link, or I want to redirect my user to when the user clicks on that plate. The page is inside the pages /, and then this is where my file that I will be linking from. So it is index.html. So I will say pages / and then the name of the page. The file name of the page is porcelain plate. So I will put porcelain plate. Now I'm going to copy everything here and then go back to my browser and then paste the link. The title is what is going to be shown when the user hovers over this plate. So I'm going to just say porcelain plate. And then the target is the tab in which the link will be opened when the user clicks on the plate. So I'm going to make it blank, say that it is open on a different or in a separate tab. Now, after you have finished this, you have to go on, and before actually doing that, we need to tell this app where everything is defined at this moment. Okay, so if you don't do that, look at how the code will be. If you look at the code, they are saying codes, but codes are not defined. They are saying not a number. So the app does not know the coordinates for the hot area we are actually talking about. Let us therefore tell the app that, you know what, I want this plate here to be the hot area. I told you already I am the lazy type, so I'm not going to be so accurate. I'm assuming that this one of mine is going to be as enough for me as possible. So I'm going to leave everything the way it is. And then let's go back to the code once again. And if you look at it, the codes are now generated because we were able to tell the app that this is the hot area we are talking about. I'm going to copy everything from here to there and then go back to my VS Code right here and then paste everything. All right, we have generated everything. We have generated the image map. as simple as possible. So that's why I was saying it is the easy way. The hard way is having to write every tag on your own and then the figure out the coordinates on your own. That's the hard way. The easy way is going to the app and doing that stuff automatically. So let's come and change some stuff here. The source, the plates we are talking about are here in the images. All these the plates, okay? So I'm going to change some little stuff here. Instead of just being plates.jpg, I will put a dot and then a forward slash and then coming to images all and then finally to plates and then save. That is it. So if I go to my browser right now and then here I come onto this image, you can see that the pointer has changed into a hand, showing me that this one is a hot area of this image. If I click on it, it takes me straight to now the detailed page of the porcelain plate. So it tells me according to Wikipedia and so many other stuff. And if I again click on this link here, it will take me now to Wikipedia where I can read more about porcelains. So you can see how interesting image maps are. You are not limited to using only one hot area. Even this can be a hot area, this can be a hot area, everything in this image can be a hot area. Let me just drive the point home by giving another example here. So I am going to leave this one the way it is and then try to create another image map. So what I'm going to do next, I want to create the image map for teddy bear, this teddy bear here. Inside the teddy bear, this is the camera. This camera here is what I want to be my hot portion. Since it is the camera, I have to come to my pages and I look for where, yes, digital camera.html. I want to generate the link for this. So I'm going to put a comment and then generate its link. So it will be ./pages and then / then digital camera. All right, .html, by the way, you need to don't leave out that. So I take everything, Control-C, and right now head back to my browser, then come back to my app. Inside here I will click also get from my PC, and then I take the teddy bear, this one. If you look at it, this one is not perfect rectangle. The shape is a polygon. So I'm going to take poly, and then the link is what is already in my clipboard, so I will just paste. And then the title, I'm going to just say digital, and then I am going to also make the target to be a blank and then show the code. Again, make sure you don't forget to put the hot area in the image. So I will click on here, click on there, click here, okay, continue there, okay, down here, there, and then here. All right, we are managed to create the hot portion here. So what am I going to do next is just show me the code. Look at the coordinates, all of them have been generated and the shape is a poly. The next thing we are going to do is copy everything, head back to the VS Code, and then inside here I will paste. All right, my image map has been generated really very quickly. So you can see that there is no time wasted here. You can have as many image maps as possible, but you are not writing everything. The thing is being generated automatically for you. So that's why it is the easy way. So let us change this. Instead of just being teddy bear, I'm going to put .forward and then come to images all and then teddy bear. Teddy bear is here. Save this. There is one thing you need to take note of. We have image map and then it is the use map, right? And then image map again. So these ones are the same. So the browser will not know what you are talking about. It will confuse the browser. So you need to identify this one differently. Instead of this one being also image map, give it another name. Let me just put mine simply as image only. Let me put it image like that. And then come also and change this name to image. So what connects this image img tag to the map is this name. So the name must be the same as the use map. That's what connects the two. The other ones I have already explained. So let us save and then go back to the browser and check out what has really been generated at this moment. Let us go to our page. So you can see my image right now is showing right here, and we have a hot portion or hot area. If I click on this, it takes me directly to the page of the digital camera. Again, there is some little information they have given, and they are telling you to read more about right here using this link. So that's how you create image maps. And guys, I don't want this one to be any longer, so I am going to stop here. But you can play around again with image maps as much as you can. The good thing, I've shown you the easy way of generating coordinates. That's it for this lesson, and I hope to see you in the next lesson. And perfect. So in this lesson we are going to talk about links and iframes, rather iframes. So I am used to calling them iframes anyway, that's why, but the right pronunciation is iframes. So a link allows a user to jump from one part of a page to another. Okay, let me just demonstrate for you. Now in this page of mine, let me just say I am going to have HTML links. That's going to be the main heading for this page, but somewhere in my document I again just put a link. By the way, to specify a link within or to define a link within your HTML document, you use what we call an anchor tag or the A tag. So you just write A, and then when you tap it, it gives you that the most important or the required attribute for this element is the href attribute. The other ones are just optional. So the most important is the href attribute. So the href attribute is the one you pass the URL to. The value of href is a URL, and it specifies the page to which the link will go to when you press on it. So let me just go ahead and I identify a simple page for mine here. Let me go in my pages here and I just pick one of these pages. Let me just say maybe I am happy with the mouse HTML. So let me use this one as a demonstration. So what goes inside the opening tag and the closing tag is anything from text to even videos. Okay, you can use a video inside where you are seeing the cursor right now. You can use text, you can use an image, you can use a graphic, you can use literally anything that can make up a page. When you clicked, it takes you to the expected page. So let me just put a simple text inside here, and I will just say go to mouse page. So I said go to mouse page. So when I save this and then I go to my browser, you will see that there is this thing here saying go to mouse page. If I press on it, it opens the mouse page as you can see here. Now let's first go back. Let's go back and we make sure some things are clear. If you saw, when I clicked on this, it opened the mouse page right in the same tab where my main tab or my main page was. This is because I did not specify any other additional attributes within the anchor tag. So if I wanted it to open in a different tab, you have seen it in so many websites. When you try to click on a link, it opens in a different tab. Okay, the reason why it happens like that is because these people also went ahead and specified another attribute. This attribute is called a target attribute. So this target attribute here has got 4 values. The first is blank, as you can see, parent, self, and the top. Okay, now the most obvious that we can easily demonstrate here are the blank and the self. Okay, these are the most obvious, blank and the self. So if I put blank and I save this and come back to the page, then press on the link, it should open my page in a new or in a separate tab. So the reason it's happening is because of the target attribute. Then the other one, which I told you is the most obvious, is the self. Now self is also self-explanatory because it just tells the browser that open the link within the same tab. Just in other words, this is the default. So if I click on this, it just opens the link within the same tab my main page was. There are two values that I have not talked about right now at this moment. If I try to demonstrate, they will not make sense. So just be patient and I'm going to demonstrate them for you. Now the next thing that would be very good for us to talk about right now is any other attribute maybe which you can put inside of this. Maybe the other attribute you can put at this moment here is the title attribute. Now the title attribute is just, of course, the way we specified it here, okay, in the lesson for attributes. Right now, therefore, I think you can allow me remove it. So we don't talk about it. The next thing that we can talk about here is if you are using text just like the way I have used it here as the clickable part of this link, then it is going to receive 3 default properties depending on the state of the link. The state of the link is whether it is visited, whether it is unvisited, or whether it is active. Those are the states I'm talking about. So when a link is unvisited, it receives the property of having a blue text, and that blue text is underlined. Okay, I have already visited this link which you are seeing here. So if we go to the page, it will not show what I'm trying to talk about. But let me copy this very link here in the next line. So let me put it to something else. Let me first go back to pages, and I go to a page I haven't visited since I opened this document, the table.html. Yeah, let us use the table.html here. So instead of keyboard, let me say table. Let's go back to the browser. Yes. So you can see that because we have never visited this link since we started this lesson, the text is blue and it is underlined. Now, because we visited this link, the text is purple and it's underlined. Those are already the 2 states, visited and unvisited. Then if it is active, usually this one is a little bit tricky to demonstrate, okay? But when I press on it, I hope you saw how it was. Do you see exactly when you left click and hold it, it shows it red. And therefore it shows that the page is active. It is the one you are trying to visit. So when I press on it, it momentarily becomes red and then it takes you to the page you are supposed to go to. So those are the 3 states of the link text. All right, so that is all about links. Yes, I promised to talk about the 2 values that you put inside of this one. I'm going to talk about them. But before I talk about them, I need to also mention the second theme of this lesson, which is the iframes. That's where also the other 2 values here are going to make sense when I try to explain them. So iframe is just a page that you get and invade into another page. To make this point already very clear, let me come inside of this body element and I try to define an iframe. An iframe is just defined by, let me first clear some space. We are using a lot of space here and we don't need it. So an iframe is defined by using an iframe tag like this. So this is the iframe tag, all right? And the iframe tag has also got a required attribute, which is called the src attribute. And src attribute defines the URL or the file path of the page that is going to be displayed inside of that iframe that you have defined. So if I go ahead and I say, so let me go to pages once again, and then I just take a decorator. Now let me take porcelain plate, this one. So inside here, I'm going to, so if I leave the thing the way it is, my iframe is really going to be very small. Let us first see how it is by default, how small it is. So by default, you can see how my iframe is. It is this small. It is just here, this one here that you are seeing here. But if I try to scroll through, you can see how small it is. But I really want it to be a little bit bigger. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to define the height and width of the iframe. I want the height to be 640 pixels. Let me also make the width to be the same. If I save this, then go back to the page, you can see that my iframe is big enough now to accommodate at least everything. The frame border, of course, I am sure you get the gist here. It's just the border around the frame. Right now it is 0, and that's why we cannot see a frame. Let us increase the value maybe to 1, and we may see something. And you can see something. This one was not there at the beginning. The higher the order, the wider the width. We suppose not so. Let's try to increase the width a bit, maybe to 3, and we see how the thing is going to be. And we can see that really there is no change. So it means that the other values do not affect the frame border. The most important is just changing. It is like switching it on and off. So there are only 2 values, the 0 and 1 in this case, that you can use. But of course, if you want to maybe have more control over the border, we can actually go ahead and use the style attribute here by adding the border inside of this. So you can see that the border is pretty big right now. Let's try to connect now the iframe and the links. At first I talked about values that you can use within the target attribute of this. Now the others were the parent, and then the top, I'm going to just show you how the parent works. I must define my iframe right here. What I'm going to do, I'm coming inside of this keyboard, if it is the keyboard I want to use. Then within this keyboard, I'm going to define the value here as parent. So I'm going to make this one parent. Then I come back to my main page. So my main page is going to be the parent. Now this keyboard here is going to be inside the iframe. So instead of having a porcelain here, I'm going to put the iframe right here. So I'm going to make this one keyboard. You can see that this is our keyboard, okay, and this is our iframe. Now this iframe is a page, like I told you. This is a page, not so. There is also another page, this one, this outer one. So inside of this window we have 2 pages, the outer page, inner page. Now the outer page is what we call the parent frame, and then the inner page is what we call the child frame. Because I defined the target of this link to be the parent, we expect this link to open the page within the parent frame, but not within inside here. So let's try it out, and we open here. We should see a loading showing up here. This means that the page is supposed to open within the parent frame. And for some reason, I have my internet connection really going slower than I expected. I really didn't expect it to load like that. Yes. Good, it has loaded, and good. Even though the thing does not load completely, I'm sure you have already seen that the thing has opened in the parent frame. Let's go back. Now let's change the gears, and we come back to this keyboard.html, and instead of using parent, let us just leave it blank. Actually, we can remove everything such that we make the thing by default self. Okay, let me remove everything and then save the file. Then go back to the browser, and I press on the keyboard. I should see something different. I have pressed on this, and if you look at it, nothing is loading on here, meaning this page is not going to load therefore outside of the inner page. It is going to load within this page here. So that's the difference between the self and the parent. The top, the way it works is, if we have about 3 frames, we have the outermost frame, then the second outermost frame, and then within that second outermost frame we have another frame. Assuming we have 3 frames, the innermost frame we define there an attribute, and then we put a target. We say target, okay, target, let it be top. The moment we do this, it means that the link is going to open in the outermost frame, which is always going to be the main window. Now we have seen that there are 4 ways of using the target attribute within the anchor tag, but then there's also a 5th way. The 5th way, you need to create an iframe just the way it is here, and inside of this iframe you give it a name. I am going to give this iframe a name, so I am going to say name. Let me give it just iframe, and instead of the target being self, I'm going to say let it be iframe. Now if I press on this, go to mouse page, look at how it is. It has displayed within the iframe. We have almost exhausted everything that you have that has to do with linking or relating links, and then the iframes. We have almost exhausted everything. The only thing that's remaining now is just maybe using trying to beautify these iframes here, which is all CSS. And of course, this course is not entirely about CSS, so there is no need for us to touch CSS at this moment. But you have seen how you can use iframes with links now, and so you are good to therefore use iframes in your next project without any issues. So this has brought us to the end of this very long lesson, which I did not expect to be this long. But then I am sure it was worthwhile because we have exhausted everything that we needed to know. So it is time to go to the next lesson. And perfect. In this lesson, we are going to talk about container elements. Container elements are elements which we use for wrapping other elements for the ease of styling them. Any website must be styled, and therefore, to easily style such a page, we need to group elements into groups. And therefore, these elements which we use for grouping other elements into groups are called container elements. These container elements do not hold any other meaning to the browser and even to the developer himself. For such a reason, we usually call them also as non-semantic elements. Examples of such container elements include div element, span element, and to a great extent the section element. I am using section element here in a very loose way because some developers still believe that section element is a semantic element. But to me, I consider it to be a non-semantic element. I've used it on really very many occasions, and I'm not seeing anything that qualifies it to be as a semantic element. Let us just look at a very simple example of using a semantic element. Let us group about 3 elements together. We want to group a A2 element and then a paragraph and some image together because we want to put them side by side when we are styling them. So I am going to get the div element. Okay, and then in this div element I'm going to put my paragraph element, and then I just put a placeholder text there as lorem ipsum, and then I am going to put an image tag. Okay, and then I just put a simple image here. Let me say it should be workplace. It should be workplace.jpg, and then for now let me just leave the alternative text because I'm sure my image will display. Let's continue, and I put maybe another simple let us just put actually on top here A2 element. So I'm going to put A2 element here as A2 element, and then put some placeholder heading. Let me just take from here to here, and then Control C, put it up right here, Control V, and when I save write this and I check it on the browser, oh, I have not started my server. Let me start my server straight away very quickly. So right click and open with live server. Yes, so right now the element which is this text here and then this text here plus this image, all of them are containing another element. This element here is the div element. Okay, now if I wanted to style these using CSS, I will not have any hard time trying to style them. I can put them side by side. Just to demonstrate for you, let me just come to this div element here, and then I put a style attribute, and then I say display. Alright, what I'm using here is actually a very advanced CSS property, so do not worry about it. I'm just using it here to tell you that container elements are good for styling. So I am going to put here display, and I put flex. And let me leave everything the way it is, and you see what result we are going to have at this moment. If I save this and then go back to my browser, you can see that my elements are being put side by side. The one which was on top is now to the leftmost, then the one which was in the middle is also in the middle here, and then the image which was the last is at the end. So you can see that because I was using my container elements here, working with the styling was really very easy, and therefore that's why we need container elements. On very many occasions we are going to be using container elements. Container elements are very important, and therefore you need to know about them. So the opposite of non-semantic elements is the semantic elements. Now semantic elements are elements which clearly describe their meaning to both the browser and the developer. Examples of such elements include form element, table element, list element, nav element, header element, footer element. The list is quite long, okay? But in the future lessons, when I talk about an element which is quite strange, I will make sure to highlight where that element belongs. Okay, in fact we have made a separate chapter for each of these, for almost each of these semantic elements. So let us leave this lesson when we are still interested, and therefore see you in the next lesson. In this lesson we are going to talk about lists. Just like the way you can define lists in your Word document, we can also define lists in HTML. Now, there are two types of lists in HTML. The numbered lists, which are called the ordered lists, and then the bulleted lists, which are called the unordered lists. Now, to define the unordered lists, this is how we are going to do that. The UL tag, which stands for unordered list. Let us give it a heading so that we can tell our users what we are talking about here. So let me just give it a simple heading of H1. Let me call it animals and I don't know, I have no idea what I've written. So animals and birds. Animals and birds. Then each list item is defined by li, which stands for list item. So when I hit enter, and then I will have animal types. We have what we call domestic animals. All right. So let me copy this and to the next line. The other type of animals we have are called the wild animals, right? Wild animals. The birds we have what we call the domestic birds. The other type of birds we have are called wild birds. Wild birds. Let me put Frollo here. So we have defined our list. If I save this and then go to my browser, I can see that I have animals and birds, and we have domestic animals, wild animals, and the likes. So if you go back to VS Code, we are going to use a style attribute in the ordered list right here, unordered list. So I will say style, and then I put list style type, which is the second one here. Then I'm going to put, instead of it being a disk, I'm going to put a square. If I save this and then go back, I should see some change, and therefore the other one changed from being a disk to a square. You can actually define lists within lists. So domestic animals, we know very many examples of domestic animals. I will define another list of domestic animals. So again, list item, and then the first domestic animal that I'm most familiar with is a dog. Get another domestic animal, which is a cat. Another one, which is a goat. The other one is a sheep. The list is, I think, quite long if you know of domestic animals. Let us leave it there. Let me save this. I should see a list within a list. So domestic animals, we have a dog, cat, and so on. Now, to work with ordered lists, let me put ordered list. To define an ordered list, you use OL, standing for ordered list. Each list item in ordered list is also defined by LI. If I save and then go to the browser, I should see languages, human languages, programming languages, markup languages. A type attribute. In the type attribute, you can use a capital A as the listing way, or small a, or any other. But for me, let me choose capital A. So I will use capital letters here as my ways of listing. You can see that they have instead changed to A, B, and C. And then go to the browser, check the result. If you want to change the look of this list, you are supposed to use CSS. And therefore, let us leave this lesson the way it is, and we go for the next lesson, shall we? In this lesson, we are going to talk about another semantic element, the table element. Now, tables are a great way of conveying information to users, and therefore, knowing how to use tables in your HTML is very important. By the way, defining tables in your HTML is really a very easy thing to do, and I am going to demonstrate for you that it is really easy by beginning. Now, to define a table in your HTML document, you need to use a table tag. Okay, everything that you need to define in that table must be defined in the table tag. You can have as many tables as you want in your HTML page. The next thing that you must be asking right now, okay, should I just dump my data right there? No, a table must have a row, a column. Where the table row and the table column meet will be called the cell of the table. And to define a row in your HTML document, you need to use a TR, which stands for table row. Now, in this row, you can have table data, or you can have the headings. In any table, there must be at least a heading. So I'm going to define my headings within this table row. And to define a heading, you need to use another tag, which is called the TH tag. The TH tag stands for table heading or table header. So I use TH. Now I am ready to define what my heading for the column is going to be. I'm going to put the first one as employee ID. Then the second one is going to be the name of the employee. So TH. Then I go ahead and I put another table heading. The next table heading is going to be the department to which the employee belongs. So it's going to be department. And then the next one is going to be the location or the address of the. And right now I have defined all the columns for this table. The next thing I'm going to do is now put the employees, okay, in this table. So to put the employees, you need to enter another row, and in that row I'm going to now put all the employees. To define table data in this case, you need to use another tag, which is TD. So this one defines the table data. What goes below those headings is defined by a TD. The first employee ID is going to be 100. So right now I have defined the employee ID here. The next one is the name. Of course, it really doesn't look the way you are supposed to see the table. But right now, instead of looking at it in a horizontal way, you look at it in a vertical way. That side that the first one is the employee ID corresponds with this. Then name will correspond with the next one. Look at them in a vertical order. So the name will now, let us give it a simple name of maybe Adam. Okay, let us say Adam. Then the department to which Adam belongs, let us say management. Management is management, right? Yeah, that one. Then I again go to the next one. The employee ID corresponding with 100, name corresponding with Adam, department with management, and address in Tinder. HTML tables by default do not have borders. And to define borders of HTML tables, you need to use CSS. Now, if I had to put styles to each of these elements, it would be really so time consuming and tiresome. So how should I make it easier? Now to make it easy, I have to come back now to the head element. And then within the head element, I'm going to define now another element which is called a style. Now in this, I can now be able to define CSS for different elements within my body. How should I define the styles now for this table? I am going to get the table. So I want to define the border for this. I just want to have a single border for each of the table cells, and then to do that one, I now need to add another CSS property inside of this selector, and I put border collapse, and then I say collapse. Let us save and check out with the result in this case. If we come back here and we see, yes, now the thing is looking much better, right? Now to make this table a little bit big, I have already prepared some data here. So I'm just going to copy and I paste it inside there. I will get the whole of this. I just want to make it a little bit bigger. So I will copy this. Let me just actually cut it. I don't need any other remaining stuff here. And then I come and paste it inside right here. I paste it there. Okay. So yeah, this is okay. Let me save. Oh, we have a problem. The thing is not being formatted. It looks as if we are causing some issues here. Let me first go back in time. Okay, we made a mistake. We just copied the table data. We did not put them in a row. We needed to put them all in their rows, in their respective rows. So I need to copy from there until here. Now let me cut again and then go back. Right now everything should be better. If I paste again, yes, let me save. Good, everything is now working perfectly fine. Let's go back and check the result from the browser. And yes, we have a much bigger table right now. So that's how we define a table in HTML. I want to also point out that you do not have to use only text within these table data. You can even add elements inside of these table data. You can add elements, you can add, for example, images, you can add literally anything inside of this. So it is not only limited to text. You can even add another table within this table data. I am not supposed to break this. The organization has already been determined by the first TR. The first table row has determined the structure of this table. And if I come and add another table data right here, when I have not defined it up here, everything will break. So what I'm going to do to just give you a simple example of what I'm talking about, that you can put anything, literal anything. Instead of putting a real name here for this address, I'm just going to change it to an image. So I'm going to put image tag right here, and then workplace.jpg, as simple as this one. Let me save, and let us go to the browser and check what we have. And you can see that inside of this table I have even brought an image into it. You can actually get any column to span more than one column. Now, for example, if the name, for example, I want it to span more than 2 columns, it is very easy to do that one. And to do that, you need to use what we call a call span. Let me just give you a simple example here. I will define another table as table. Now I want to speed these things up, so I will just shift a little bit and take one row away from here, bring it right here, Control V. Let me again go and shift once again, and I copy this row and then paste it also. I want the name to span 2 columns, right? If I want it to span 2 columns, then instead of having 2 columns inside of this, I am going to do this. I'm going to say, okay, if I have to span 2 columns, then it is going to be this column and then the next column, which is the department column. Okay, so I am supposed to remove the department here. Remove the department, save this. Instead of having finance here, I'm going to put the next name. Let me put Doe. I need to come into this th and I say call span, and then I put inside of it 2. I should see that the name is spanning 2 columns, which is John Doe. So that's how you work with the attribute of call span. Of course, as you might have guessed, there's also row span. Row span, it also has the same logic as the call span, and you can therefore, I have given that one as an exercise for you to try out. There is more to tables that we have not talked about, and that one is connected with styling. This has brought us to the end of this lesson, and therefore we get to the next lesson. So in this lesson, we are going to talk about another semantic element, the form element. Forms are the only way you can send user information from the front end to the back end, okay? So when you have developed this website, it is completely now functional, and then it has got users. Which users? You want to know the users for your website. You also need to maybe be making some transactions with these users. Maybe this website is a website whereby there are some products that you sell on the website, and you need to therefore have the details about these users. This is where forms come in. To specify a form in HTML, you use what we call the form tag. And as you can see, it has straight away brought the attribute called the action attribute. Now, this action attribute is required if you are just developing a website which is purely HTML and CSS. But when you add in JavaScript, it may not be required. The value of the action attribute is a page on the server. Rather, it is a script on the server, which when you click the submit button, receives the data and then validate or do anything with it from the server side before it can return to you the results. It can be, for example, something like maybe stroke and then maybe something like saying validation then .js. Okay, this validation.js is a file that is on the server. It can be even validation.php. It can end something like that. This file is not on your file system, but it is on the server. The next attribute of this form element is a target. Okay. Now, and as you might have guessed already, a target is functioning exactly the same way it does for links. So when we receive some data back from the server, the data is supposed to be displayed on a web page. Is it going to be displayed on a blank web page, or in a separate tab, or in the same tab, or in the parent, just like the way we looked at in the links? So if I say blank, the information I receive back from the server is going to be displayed in a separate tab. The next attribute that we would want to talk about here is the method attribute. Now, the method attribute has got 2 very important values that we need to know of: the get and the post. Now the get is good for getting data back from the server. You just, in other words, put a search term and you enter such that the server can get back results for you. For example, you have gone onto a given website and you want to search certain products. Maybe you want to search maybe phones. You want to search iPhones. You go to the search bar and you type there iPhones. So when you hit enter, the server will go and search for all iPhones from the database and then returns the results to you. This is where you use the get. It is the default method, even if you don't specify it here. So you cannot use get when you are trying to send user information to the server. The other things maybe that can be inside of this are the filters. For example, you say I want iPhones, but these iPhones I want the ones whose price is ranging from maybe $1,000 and backwards. I don't want the ones which are more than $1,000. Or I want iPhone 13, only iPhone 13. The additional information here are just the filters, and that's where those are the ones you can use with get method. Then the other attribute you can use here is autocomplete. So autocomplete, if you say on, then if you have ever made any search on the website and then you try again to come back, the browser will suggest for you the things you have already been searching on the website, and you can choose from the previous searches that you made, or you put a new search. That depends on you. So if I do like that, I will have my autocomplete on. So those are the most common attributes you are going to be using with your form. Oh, I have not talked about the post here. Okay, the post, if I use post here, this is where I need to submit the user information or user details to the browser. For example, I have my user and this user wants to register with us. The registration form must have a method of post by all means, because it will have the body, which body will contain the details for the user. Now let us enter into the form element and we talk of the most commonly used form elements. So the first commonly used form element, or the most used form element, is the input element. The input element, this one here. Now the input element has got a type attribute which is required. Now the type attribute has got an insane number of values. There are so many that if we want to talk about them in this lesson, all of them, we may actually spend hours talking just about the values here. So I am going to just mention a few which are the ones you will most commonly work with, or you will likely work with. And the first one is of course text. So if you want to get the user's name, then the input is going to be of type text. Then the other thing you need to put is going to be the name. You must have the name here, because this name is what the browser is going to use to collect the information. So you can just maybe put the name here and you say first name. It is very important that you put this attribute, because if you don't have it, the name that you are trying to collect here will not be in the body. You will send the form data when the first name is missing. So this one is very important. Then the other attribute for this is going to be the ID. So ID is important. You already know what ID does. It selects the specific element. And ID, let me just say it is going to be first name. It's used usually with the label element, which we are going to talk about shortly. The last one is the default value, and I can put it here, maybe for example ding. So this is the default value. So if I save this, okay, the way it is right now, let us see how this is going to appear on our web page. Yeah, you can see the default value is ding, but of course I can put my own values that I want here. For example, I can put mark. So that is how the input with the type of text appears. Now, if I want to make this really a user-friendly, I have to again add another element, and this element is the label element. It is good if we put it before here, because it means that the label will come before the field. So let us put it before the input, and I will say label element. So label element, as the name suggests, is used for labeling fields. So I'm going to say label for. What am I supposed to label? What I'm labeling is the first name input field. So I am going to therefore use the ID, which is f name, to bind these two elements together. So I'm going to say f name. So right now I have bound now these two elements. Then I need to put the label. What is supposed to be the label? It is supposed to be first name. So I will say first name, and then I put of course a colon like that. Let us see how the result looks. So you can see first name is that field. So at the moment I just click on this, it automatically focuses this field. So these two are now bound together. The other values of this type are the ones we need to talk about, the other most common one. The other one is going to be the email. So if I want to collect the email of the user, I need to put the type to be email. Of course, I need to put the name to be email here, and then I need to put the ID to be email also, and then value. I can decide to leave it out, okay, because there is not supposed to be a default email here, so I decide to leave that one out. But again, I need to label. So let me copy this, and then I put it to before this, okay, and then instead of just using first name, I say email. I put here email. All right, that is that. Let's save, and then we check the result. Yes, so we have first name, email, and you can see that these are following themselves. And if you remember from the lesson of inline and the block elements, they are following themselves because these one are all inline elements. These element, label, input, all of them are inline. So that's why you are seeing they are following themselves one after another. So to make this one even a little bit better, I am going to introduce you to an element I have not mentioned so far, which is called a break element. So a line break. So I want to break this line here. I want to make it push any other thing that is after this line here to the next line. Okay, so I will put the break element here, line break right there. So if we save this file and we go back to the browser, we can see that these are being pushed now to the next line. Of course, the thing is really looking a little bit unappealing. It is not looking so nice, but don't worry about anything, because that we are not concerned with the way it's supposed to look right now. We are concerned with the concepts. The next thing we are going to look at is the next value, which is going to be called a password. That's another thing you need to collect from the user, and then I will put the ID to be password. All right, the value, even there is no need for a value here. Let me also label. Let me label, instead of email, I'm going to put password. I'm going to put password. So that is that. If I save this, of course you get the point. Now again, I need to break. Okay, so this label ends here. I need to break from right there. The next value that is very common for you that you are going to be using is going to be the radio. The radio, if you are already familiar with graphical user interface, just like the way radio boxes work in graphical user interface, the same way HTML radios also work. So if you have about 4 elements and you try to click on one, the others are deselected. Only one is always selected. So that is what radio does here. So I have my radio, and then the name is going to be, it depends. Now I want to collect the gender of this user. I have already prepared some stuff here because I don't want a lot of typing. I am going to cut everything that is here in this comment, cut it, and then come inside here. I want to collect the gender, so that's why I have that. I have the label, then with the male, and so on and so on. If I save this, let's see how the thing is appearing right now. You can see that if I click on male and then I again click on female, it should shift to female, and male is deselected. The others, if I click on others, it should also deselect female, and like that. So the reason that is happening is because we have defined the name for all the 3 radio buttons. I think they begin from here. Yes, they begin from right here. All the 3 radio buttons have the same name. So it is very important that you put the names of radio buttons to be the same if you want to group those radio buttons together. The next one that we are going to talk about, the next value of the type attribute, is the checkbox, and the checkbox is I am sure is the opposite of radio. So with checkbox, if you have a list of items, you can select more than one. So I have also prepared already checkboxes here. So I'm just going to cut this and then get into my form and then put everything down there. So if I save this right now, so let's check how it is appearing on the browser right now. Yes, so we have HTML, XML, CSS, JavaScript, PHP. If I click on HTML, I can be able to click on XML, I can be able to click on CSS, I can be able to click on almost all of them. So that's how checkboxes are fundamentally or functionally different from the radio buttons. Let's go back. I have shown you almost all the very common values for this type attribute. Like I mentioned, there are really so many values that we cannot exhaust in only this lesson. So I want to end from here, but I am going to give you the other values that you can use here. If you want to make research about them, feel free to do that. Again, you need to realize that I have put the names for this as web language. The names are the same in all cases. I have given them default values here and then IDs such that I can be able to label them, which I have already done. I have shown you up there already. So this one, there is no difference at all. That is the input element, and how its type attribute can make it behave differently in different situations. Oh, another very important type I have left out here is the submit type, which I'm going to put at the end. Of course, for any form that the user has filled, the form must always be submitted. So it would make no sense if the form cannot be submitted. The next element that we want to talk about before we submit our form is the select element. So select element gives a drop-down list where a user will select an item. So I'm going to give the name of this select element as languages. And then the ID, I'm going to give it language also, languages. Let me just make it simple like that. And then now the select element has got elements which are supposed to be put inside of it. These elements are the drop down list that are going to be shown on the browser. So I have also defined them, and they are called option elements. So I've already defined them and I just cut them out therefore, and then go back into the select and then I paste them. So let me paste. Yeah, so I have defined my drop list, and this is how the option element is used. So you write the name of the tag, then the value attribute with the value, then the same value is the same one you write outside here. That's how you use the option element. I think it is simple like that. Come to the browser. I can see that there is a drop down. I can choose any of these. I can choose Hindi, I can choose Kiswahili, I can choose Chinese, I can choose Japanese. But then this is the default way the select element is used. But then you can try to more attributes here which kind of change the behavior. So if I want to select more elements or more languages, for example, a user can speak English, can speak Spanish, can speak French. So I have to use a multiple attribute here. If I save now and I go back, right now the user has been given the ability to choose many of them. Now these options, they have also another attribute here called the selected. Right now by default, when I save this, the first option element, its value is the one that is shown in the box, okay, as you saw it here. English is the first option and it is the one selected. But if I want to change the default selection type, I can come and maybe I want Arabic to be the one that is chosen at the very beginning. So I will put another attribute here called selected. So if I save this, then come to the browser, Arabic is now the one chosen instead of English, which was the first element. So that's how you use the select method. And we have covered almost all those common elements, or the ones you will be using very frequently. The other ones I will just give the list, and if you want to find out more about them, you can just go and do that one on your own. But right now I have given you the basis of where to begin, so it should be easier for you to sail on your own. Okay, we make sure that the form is able to be submitted, and to do that one we again come with another input element, and then instead of having a type of text, we shall have a type of submit. What other stuff do we have here? We need to have the value. So we put the value and put submit. So our form is complete right now. When we have filled everything that is needed here, we can submit the form to the what? To the server. So that actually summarizes everything that you need to know about forms. Yeah, that is it for this lesson. Yeah, in this lesson, we are going to talk about character entities. In HTML, you are allowed to write any character in your document except these two characters, the less than character and the greater than character. These two here, these ones. The reason is simple. The browser may confuse these characters with tags, and therefore this can lead to rendering issues, which we really don't want. These characters we are prohibited to use directly in our HTML document are called reserved characters. But let's be honest, you will want to use these characters in your next big project, right? So are you going to give up on this big project just because of some trivial restriction? I want you to say it with me, never. Yes, you heard me. There is no need for you to give up on it, because in this situation you are going to use character entities. So character entities are just codes that you use in place of the actual character, and therefore you can display any character on your page. Yes, all characters in the whole wide world have got their own character entities. We can begin first of all by talking about the greater than and then the less than character entity. But before that, I need to mention the fact that we have two types of character entities. One is called the entity number. The second one is called the entity name. So all characters in the whole wide world have got their corresponding entity numbers, but that is not the case for entity names. For example, the greater than sign, which is, let me put another comment, the greater than sign, this has got its character name, which is corresponding to GT, but then you need to add some other simple thing here to identify that it is a character entity, and that is an ampersand. So this one is a greater than entity, and this one, when I use it in my code, it is going to be replaced by this one. I'm rendering it. Then I need to just add a quote, rather I need to just add a semicolon right there. An example of a character number, let me write the one for less than. To get the character number for the less than sign, you first write first of all this hashtag, and then followed by an ampersand, and then now the character number, so which is in this case going to be 60. So let us just take an example. Let us just put an example, and you see how these are going to be used on your web browser. So I want to say the number 7 is greater than the number 8. So if I write this, the browser may confuse. So I'm going to replace this, instead of a greater than, I'm going to replace it with the character entity, which is going to be the ampersand, and then GT, and then with and you can see that they have even suggested it for me right here. So if I just enter this, I have finished what I want to do. The next thing I want to say, yes. Is it greater than? For sure it is supposed to be the other way around. It is supposed to be 9 is greater than 8, and then the other one is going to be 8 is less than. So I'm going to use again a character entity here, but instead of using character an entity name, I'm going to use an entity number. Instead of writing less than like this, I am going to write a hashtag and then ampersand, then now the 60. Okay, the 60 like that. For some reason there seems to be an issue, and yes, I wrote it the other way around. Instead of beginning it with the hashtag, I'm supposed to begin it with an ampersand always, and then put that like that. So if I save this document of mine and then go to the browser of, yes, you can see that the thing is saying 9 is greater than 8 and 8 is less than 9. You may say, all right, is it the reason we need? Okay, now these are the two reserved characters you have talked about now. Is it because of these two reserved characters that the whole character entity stuff was brought into existence? And the answer is no, because yeah, right now this one was just an addition, but now let us see a full-blown example whereby character entities are going to really help out a lot. Now emojis are examples of characters. Then there are those characters even which are not found in your keyboard, such as the currency characters, such as euros, even pound sterling. Are they on your keyboard? I am not sure, and you need to include them in your project. So what can help you to do that one is also character entities. Now let's take, for example, we have 3 emojis here. Mountain Kilimanjaro. Of course there is no emoji called Mountain Kilimanjaro, but it is just an emoji for a mountain. Eiffel Tower, and then the other one is the Statue of Liberty. These character entities are going to be representing these emojis here. Let us write them in our document and we see how they are going to be. So the first one is going to be for Mountain Kilimanjaro. So I will take this until there, cut it out, bring it inside here, copies of it. Let me change this to 8. Let me change this to 9. Okay, and then save. Let's check what the result is from the browser. We can see that we have the mountain here, we have the Eiffel Tower, and then the Statue of Liberty. So you can see how we are able to easily add these emojis into our document without really a lot of struggle. So let's march to the next lesson. And perfect. So in this lesson, we are going to talk about multimedia. So multimedia is a combination of sound, graphics, video, and so much more. In HTML, the most common multimedia we are going to be talking about are going to be video and audio. And in this course, I am going to show you how to work with video and audio in HTML. So to begin, I am going to talk about video. Now, to add video, you use the video element. Now, inside this video element, there is a source element. The source element is used in case you have very many video formats that you need to put onto a web page such that a given browser can choose the video format it can be able to support. There are so many video formats. There is MP4, there is OGG, there is WebM, there are so many of them. And different browsers have different supports for different video formats. If you want different browsers to be able to show your video on a web page, that's where you use the source element. These days, the support for video is really widespread among all browsers. So even if I don't use the source element, I can still work with videos without any problem. So I'm going to first remove the source element like that. Then come into the src, and I'm sure by now you know what the src does. So I am going to pick a file from my file system by just putting a / then a stroke, and then I have a video within my demo. So I'll just take this video here, and then I'm going to take to video. The next thing I'm going to do, I need to define the dimension, just like we always do with any media we want to put, like images. You saw that we had to put dimensions, and it's the same thing I'm going to do here. So I'm going to define the dimensions by using a style attribute, and then put the width of this to be 640 pixel. I'm going to put the height to be 360 pixel. This is all enough. The next thing I'm going to do is to add more attributes of this video element. The attributes that we can add here are the controls, like if you want to play the video, if you want to pause it, if you want to fast forward it, if you want to download, all of these ones are under the controls attribute. So I'm going to put the controls here. If I say controls, then I enter that video, my video is going to have those controls that I just mentioned. So let me save, and then we check how the thing is looking right now in the browser. And this is the video. So let me play. Wow, such a beautiful multimedia. All right, so because I put the controls, you see that I have this play button here, I have this volume button, I have where I can expand, I have where I can minimize, and then much more. So these ones are all added into this video because of the fact that we use the controls attribute. Let's get back to the lesson. If I wanted my video to loop over and over again, then I will add another attribute here called a loop. If I save this, then go back, start the video, this video should loop. So you can see that the video is looping because we added the loop attribute. The other attributes that you can put are like autoplay and then mute. All those ones you just add them into the video element and then they will be reflected on the page. Now if you look at it, my file extension for this video is mp4, but there is OGG. Like I mentioned, there are so many others. Now if you wanted all these video formats to be displayed on your web page, then you will have to enter, instead of using the src attribute right here, you will have to use it within the different source elements right here. So I'll put source 1, and then I put the src like that, and then I put now this. Right now the only file format I have is mp4, so I'm not going to show you the OGG and the other stuff, but it would be interesting for you to find out on your own. Now let us work with audio. Like the way videos have so many different file formats, so do the audios. Now to add audio on your web page, you need to use audio element. And if you understood how you work with video, it should also be very easy to work with audio. So I'm going to also define a file path here. I come to demo right again. Now the next thing I'm going to do is adding the style. No, this one, remember, you don't need to show anything like a dimension for audio. It's just going to show that on play button and then the volume controls. So the only thing that we can add here is the controls, and we should be good to go. Let's save and check how it looks on the web page. So this is our audio, and now we can play this audio. And that is it for audio. It is as simple as that. So adding audio is really so simple. You do not need to put so many stuff. Maybe you can add loop also. And if you have noticed, we are using attributes without real values. At the beginning of the course, I mentioned that there are those attributes which do not have values. And I'm sure you are seeing them, how we are using them right here. So that is it for this lesson of multimedia. This brings us to the end of the lesson, of course, and bye-bye. Congratulations! You have completed the first course you need to become a web developer. Now, do not sit back because you have got to end what you started. You must see the results, but with HTML alone, you won't see much results. If web development could be compared with farming, then this course is like preparing the field. To harvest at the end of the season, you need to plant crops. Since we have our base, we need to build from it. We need to turn that boring looking web page into something beautiful. This is done by CSS. CSS course is the next course we are going to look at. I am making these courses in succession. So go to the channel and start with CSS course right away. But if you don't see the CSS course, then just be practicing HTML as you wait its publication. It should not take long before it is published for you guys. I want to thank you for choosing to learn web development with me, and as always, just have fun with it. Bye bye. See you in the CSS course.